Good evening, guys. Welcome back to our weekly show. You are tuned in to Estudiante Blues and you are watching here in the Greatness Hub online channel. This is the only online channel affiliated with iHealth Coaching and Business Solutions Incorporated. And I will be your host. My name is Coach Luz at your service. So before we proceed to our weekly program, let us first remind everyone to don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course watch all our programs here in the Greatness Hub online channel, the only online channel affiliated with iHealth Coaching and Business Solutions Incorporated. So if you allow me to share my screen with you guys for a while. Okay, so our topic for this evening is entitled Developing Listening Skill. So why is developing listening skill very, very important for you as a student and for us as employees as well? So let us move on to the next slide. Okay, so before we begin the discussion, allow me first to lay down our cards on the table. So what are we expected to achieve this evening? So for our objectives, first step is that for us to be able to learn the importance of developing listening skills. So why is this listening skill very, very important for us individuals and as a group as well? Second of our objective is to know the reason why listening and listening skill is very, very difficult. So what are the different stumbling blocks that prevents us to effectively listen to other individuals? And third objective is to appreciate the benefits of listening. So what do we get out of developing a very, very good listening skills? And lastly, for us to be able to apply learned strategies to improve listening skills. So how do we use and how do we develop listening skills for us to benefit from all the needs for us to listen? So without further ado, let us move into the discussion proper. So of course, first up, we have to define what is listening. So listening as defined in most literature is to pay attention to someone or something in order to hear a particular sound or what is being heard. So paying attention to someone or something. It's very, very difficult to give our 100% attention nowadays because of the different distractions, right? So why do we need to pay attention and what are the benefits of us paying attention to someone or something that is being said is relevant to our daily life activities. So later on, when we move further and further into the discussion, we will be able to know, learn, and appreciate the different benefits of developing this listening skill. So we go to the further discussion, guys. All right, so developing the listening skill and its importance. So why is it important for us to develop this particular listening skill? One is that listening skills allow us to make sense of and understand what the person is saying. Allow us to make sense of what is being said. What is it all about? What are the different elements involved in what the person is saying, or how do we able to understand what the other person is talking about if we do not really pay attention to what is being said or what is it in there that we have to listen to? It's very, very difficult if we are on the other side of the conversation where we have to actually give our 100% attention to that person who is actually telling us something. So developing listening skills is very, very important for us to understand the person and what he or she is talking about so that we will be able to avoid miscommunication. Another importance of developing listening skill is that good listening skill make us more productive. So what does listening got to do to being productive? If we are able to listen and listen good, this only means that we are able to take note of the different important instructions or the different things that is included and that we will never get wrong or we will never go wrong. Never going wrong to instructions or given to us means that we are always on the right track. And if we are always on the right track, we're able to produce as much as necessary. Okay, next. Another importance of developing listening skills is that it allows us to better understand assignments and, of course, instructions being given. This is very, very important, particularly if you are a student. Basically, we are online and most of the instructions could either be given via PowerPoint presentations or in most cases, you are given instructions verbally and the lessons are also given verbally. But there are certain times where you're given PowerPoint presentations or slides or lecture notes at that. But basically, the form of communication in most cases during our online classes or online presentations are given orally. So with the development of a good listening skill, we will be able to better understand lectures, assignments, and instructions being given to us on a daily basis. Okay? Another importance of developing this listening skill is for us to be able to understand what is expected of us and what is expected from us. The root word there is understand. Okay? So we really have to basically develop listening skills. Very, very important because developing this particular skill enables us to better understand. Okay? Better understand what is expected of us or what is expected from us. Okay? So after identifying the different importance of what listening skill can do to us, now what are the benefits of developing such listening skills? So first and foremost is that we are benefited from developing good listening skills because developing such skill conditions us to become more compassionate, more patient, and more nurturing. So how could that be? Listening skills becomes we develop and we become more compassionate. Try to imagine this. If we are able to develop good listening skills, we have to take consideration what the person has to say. And taking consideration what the person has to say enables us to better understand the person and making us better understand a particular person through our listening skills, we are able to relate to what the person is actually saying. We become more compassionate and waiting for the person to finish what he or she is about to say develops in us the ability to become patient. And eventually, in the long run, developing compassionate, becoming a very patient individual allows us to become a nurturing person. Hence, enables us to nurture relationship and keep relationship as the end product of our developing good listening skills. Another benefit of developing listening skill is that it takes us out of our tendency toward self-absorption and self-interest, connecting us intrinsically in the world around us. How does listening skills enable us to develop the tendency of becoming compassionate with other individuals and let us out of our self-absorption? All right, so this is how it is. So when we are able to develop our listening skills, eventually we tend to identify ourselves with another individual. We become less self-centered, but rather we become more focused on the other person. Okay, we give our 100% full attention to another individual, focusing on what the person is saying, what he or she is meant by what he said, and taking us away from being self-centered and self-absorbed, and all our interest towards ourselves actually is transferred to being interested in another person. Thus, eventually, we are able to be connected in the outside world, giving more focus on the other individual who is at the other end of the conversation or the communication process. So eventually, when we start to develop our listening skills, we are moving away from being self-absorbed, self-centered, and eventually becoming interested in the outside world more than ourselves. Another benefit of developing listening skills is that it makes us better understand and make connections between ideas and information. All right. So when we develop listening skills, we tend to be more focused on understanding what is actually meant by each individual words in the communication process. We are able to take a mental note, or you could also actually make a physical note for you to be able to make a bigger picture out of those individual words. You're trying to read the lines. We are actually able to develop the skill of reading between the lines. And with all the notes, the important details that we take note of, we are able to connect the dots and even read beyond the lines for us to be able to better understand what is being said on a larger scale, for us to be able to see a bigger picture of just a simple conversation. So developing listening skills enables us to better understand and make connections between ideas and information that we really take no mental note or physical note of. Another benefit of listening skills, developing listening skills, is that it changes our perspective and, of course, challenges our assumptions. Let's accept the fact, guys, that we have our own biases and we also have our own judgments and our own definition, our own meaning of what's actually happening around us without taking into consideration what is really in or what is really happening, looking at the situation on another person's point of view. But us developing listening skills, this allows us to change our perspective. We see the person in another person's point of view. And at the same time, it challenges our assumptions. Us understanding the situation in varying perspectives challenges our biases. It enables us to better understand the situation from different perspectives. Hence, at the end of the day, our own automatic biases, our own automatic assumptions at the end of the day is really, really challenged, eventually giving us different kinds of perspective, allowing us to better understand what is happening on the other side of the conversation. Another skill, another benefit rather of developing listening skill is that it helps us to empathize and show respect or appreciation. Right. So our main objective of listening to a conversation or to different kinds of communication is for us to better understand the person on the other side of the communication process. And us knowing, understanding, what is happening on the other end of the communication process allows us to experience empathy. And empathy meaning we are able to put ourselves in the other person's point of view, other person's shoes, where we are able to truly understand where they are coming from. And with this, we are able to show our respect and we are able to show our appreciation to what is really happening on the other end of the conversation. So developing this listening skills enables us to develop empathy. And with empathy, we are able to better understand the perspective, the point of view of the person on the other side of the conversation. Okay? Knowing where all of this is really coming from firsthand based on the experience of the person on the other end of the conversation process. Now, what is the purpose of developing listening skills? Okay, one of the purposes of developing such listening skills is that it helps us to gain information, and this information becomes our basis for taking decision on any topic. So listening allows us to gain information. As we listen, we take mental note of different important aspects of the conversation, important details. And these important details, as we take mental note of this very vital information, eventually we can use this vital information based from what we have listened. And this basic information actually are being used for us to make assessment, make decisions in any particular topic or aspects of the conversation process. So one purpose is for us to gain information that is very, very beneficial, very, very crucial in our making decisions, making judgment to whatever is going on in that particular conversation you are being involved with. All right. So why is listening difficult? At certain times, we can actually hear what is going on in a conversation, but sometimes listening in its full essence is difficult. So what actually happens in the conversation that is really, really make us difficult to listen effectively? So according to different literatures, there are different factors that affect effective listening and makes listening truly difficult. These factors are the following. So physical, psychological, physiological, and semantics. So let's discuss them one by one. All right. So physical factors that affect effective listening are the following. Okay. One is that it could either be internal physical condition of the person who is listening. Internal physical factor of the person who is listening. Probably, one of the reasons is that the person has physical challenges. Physical challenges meaning something is troubling the person. Another thing is that the person is actually not interested in listening to the other side of the conversation. Okay? But the only thing that can actually know this is the person himself or herself. And it could also mean that effective listening is also affected by the physical environment. So physical environment means the physical condition outside the person himself or herself, which the person might has no control over. Say for example, noise outside. So it could be that that the effective communication is being affected by the noise of the neighbors or somewhere along the way, the sound is not audible because of interruptions. Like say, for example, if you are communicating over the net and there are internet connection challenges, so that could also fall into the physical environment and could actually affect effective listening of the conversation. Another factor that affects effective listening is psychological. Ayan. So when we say psychological, it has something to do with the person's psyche. Ayan. So something to do with the mind. It could be like physical, the person listening on the other side of the conversation has biases or has emotional, psychological challenges at the same time. It could also be reasons that the person is not interested to listen to, or the topic could be challenging for the person. So all of these things actually boils down to the effectiveness of the listening skills of the person on the other side of the conversation. Another factor that also affects effective listening is physiological. So it has something to do with the person's biology. So if the person is not feeling well, the person has pains, aches and pains like headaches, or not feeling 100% beautifully at a particular moment. So that has also an effect, or it could also affect effective listening. So the last that makes it difficult for us to listen is semantics. And semantics has something to do with the terminologies, the language that is being used by the person on the other side of the conversation. So if you're talking to a grade schooler, the language has to be a grade schooler. Or if it's highly technical, IT language is very, very difficult for an AB communication to understand. And accounting language is also challenging to an education student. So the language that we use, the terminologies that we use, highfalutin words that we use, or the kind of words that we use in a conversation also affects the communication skills, and of course cause a difficulty, a challenge in the listening skill of the person on the other side of the conversation. So it's very, very important that we use appropriate language, okay, to the person that we are discussing things with for effective listening to happen. All right. So next up, we have three basic listening skills. So these are the different skills that we can, listening skills rather, that we can apply to depending on the different kinds of listening objectives that we apply to our conversation. So let's discuss them one by one. First listening skill is attentive listening. So what is attentive listening? By definition, when we say attentive listening, is listening so we can do something with what we heard. From the root word attentive, so this means that we really have to attend to whatever we are listening to. And attending meaning we have to show that we actually are listening intently, listening interestingly to whatever the person is saying on the other side of the conversation. So we have to at least give a form of feedback for the person to know that we really are into the conversation. So how do we get or give feedback? So simply nodding, right? Um, Saying, uh-huh, mm-hmm, yes, I understand. And of course, uh, saying, giving responses to the different words that he or she is saying gives the impression that we are into. attentive listening. So we actually focus on the person who really is at the other end of the conversation process. Yeah. So responsive listening on the other side of the conversation is really what is the person saying really what the person actually feels based on the different words that the person, listening person is hearing. Responsive listening is just simply responding to the conversation. And when we say responding, you are genuinely giving an honest opinion, an honest reaction, a genuine reaction to the conversation. And you really mean what you say. So if you are against the idea, you actually say that you are against the idea. Okay, you do not take into consideration yan, the feelings, the emotions of the person on the other side of the conversation. And lastly is active listening. So active listening refers to a pattern of listening that keeps you engaged with your conversation partner. When we say active listening, so you are very, very active and participative in the conversation process. So when you have to answer the question, you answer the question. You just don't simply listen, but you participate actively in the conversation. You are engaged, okay, with your conversation partner. Now, we come to the very, very important part of our discussion. So, how do we improve our listening skills? So, actually, there are more than 10, but I only listed 5 because of a very limited time engagement. So, first step is so pay attention, show your listening, provide feedback, deeper judgment, and respond appropriately. So, let's discuss them one by one. All right. Very, very important for you to develop your listening skill is you really have to pay attention. So the objective of listening is basically to understand. And how do we able to understand the person on the other side of the conversation? The key word there is pay attention. Okay. So you listen based on your objective of how you are to listen. So we are given 3 or sometimes 4 different kinds of listening. So we listen attentively, we listen actively, and we listen responsibly. But either of or whichever listening tool you use, it will not be listening if you do not really pay attention. So how do we pay attention? It's very, very simple. You give your 101% to the person you are listening to. Alright? So for you to be able to improve your listening skill, first and foremost, you have to pay attention. So how do you pay attention? Give your 101%. Okay, undistracted attention to the person talking on the other side of the conversation. And when you pay attention, you take note of important information being given during the conversation process. Okay? Take important details. It could either be a mental note or a physical note. You jot it down, whichever the case may be. So the important thing is that you take the important details being given in the course of the conversation. So first, to develop listening skills, you have to pay attention. Second important listening skills tip to improve is to show that you are listening. Irrespective of whether or not you know the conversation because it has been going on for the longest time, you're not interested to what the person is the other person is saying. But if you really want to improve your listening skills, you really have to show that genuine impression that you are actually listening. So what are the different signs that you are listening? Diba? You have to be an active listener. You participate in the conversation, but not just simply participate, but you have to use or show or give it proper timing. Okay? What else? You give feedback. So how do you give feedback? It could either be verbal feedback or it could also be simply gestures. Gestures that show that you really understand and you're really into that conversation. So for you to be able to improve your listening skills, show that you are genuinely listening. Okay. So another strategy for you to improve your listening skills is this is what I'm saying, provide feedback. Yeah. Feedback is very, very important. All right. So feedback would be one, verbal feedback. All right. So you verbalize. You let the person know that you are actually keeping track of the conversation. You could actually paraphrase. You could also ask questions to clarify if there are actually things that you are not or you are confused or you are able to you're not able to take note of. Another kind of feedback is physical feedback. Just simply give gestures, a simple nod, and hand gestures could also be one of the feedback that you could also give. But what's important is that you give feedback to the other person on the other side of the conversation for the person to know that you are really into the conversation and for the other person to know that you are following the conversation path and you are still into listening with whatever the other person is telling you about. All right. Next step is for you to defer judgment. Okay. So for you to be able to improve your listening skill, kailangan hindi judgmental, di ba? As I've said earlier, we have our own biases. We also have our automatic interpretation of really what is going on. This is very, very expected because of our background. But always remember that different folks, different strokes. Meaning, we are a unique individual and we have our own individual experiences. We have our own interpretation of everything that's happening around us. And at first glance, the person might be experiencing something similar to what you have encountered before, but the person could actually interpret it differently. So, irrespective of your personal biases, if you really, really want to improve your listening skills, defer your judgment. So if you could put it aside, better. Okay? Your objective for you to achieve at this point in time is to listen. Okay? So listen and listen attentively. You are not there to judge. You are only there to listen. And for you to be able to listen, you have to set aside all your previous knowledge about the person and just listen to every single word the person has to say for you to truly understand the person's point of view, where he or she is coming, and for you to be able to give a 100% attention to the person on the other side of the conversation. Pick out important details that would somehow help you better truly understand the situation. And at the end of the conversation, if your opinion, if your judgment, or if your expertise is being called for, that's the only time that you are supposed to give your idea, your comments of whatever is happening. But take note, you have to listen first before you pass judgment or give recommendations or make decisions for the conversation. All right. So for you to be able to improve your listening skills, defer your judgment later. And of course, another strategy, tips and tricks on how you will be able to improve your listening skills is to respond appropriately. And respond appropriately. Okay? You have to give feedback, and feedback could actually be one of the responses that you could give or elicit to the person on the other side of the conversation. But responding appropriately is actually very, very important because there are certain situations wherein the person on the other side of the conversation actually is pouring yan, his or her heart out in the conversation process. And sometimes there are certain situations that if the conversation is very, very serious and we tend to give jokes, which is inappropriate at a particular point in time, it could be inappropriate. It could actually kill the moment. So you have to analyze the situation. Okay, take note and listen to environmental cues before you actually give responses. Yes, you have to be actively listening. You have to be responsive and apply responsive listening. But at the end of the day, take note that when you give response, it has to be appropriate because one false response could actually interpreted differently, especially for those people who are sensitive whenever they are giving their peace, their mind, pouring their heart out to you as the other chosen person on the other end of the conversation. So effective listening skills does not necessarily mean listening per se, but somewhere along the way in our giving feedback, we have to respond, and the way we respond, it has to be appropriately, okay, as called for the situation. So you also have to be sensitive to the different responses that you are giving to the person on the other side of the conversation, taking into consideration also their temperament, their mood, their situation. All right. Okay, so before we leave, I would like to leave you guys with some thoughts to ponder. According to Proverbs verse 12, chapter 12, verse 15 rather, he who is wise listens. So guys, if you want to become wise, yeah, you really have to listen. And for this episode, we are actually able to know everything about listening, and we are able to at least give you a reminders on the different listening skills, ayan, the importance of listening, the benefits of developing listening skills, and of course, different tips and tricks on how we are to improve our listening skills. So hopefully, guys, you are able to listen and learn, and eventually how you apply all the learnings that you gathered tonight will be utilized and used in your daily activity. So hopefully we're able to add on to your knowledge. If you are knowledgeable enough, I hope we're able to refresh some of those knowledge that you already have. So with this, I would like to invite you once again to please be with us next week for another episode in Estudiante Blues, only here in the Greatness Hub online channel. This is the only online channel affiliated with iHelp Coaching and Business Solutions Incorporated. So bye for now and hope to see you again soon next week. See you guys, and thank you very much for watching Estudiante Blues. So I am your coach for this evening. My name is Coach Luz at your service. So thank you very much and see you again next week. Bye for now.